Alright, this is a DK build. I've done this in medium armor, as I prefer playing medium armor. I just have more agility, more sustain, more weapon damage, crit, that sort of thing. I really like playing that way. The only difference is, or the only bad side is, you don't really have that much health. As you can see, I'm only at 23k. But everything else here is pretty good. I've been able to mitigate that somewhat through high healing and my physical and spell resistance. Now buffed up. My weapon damage is pretty good. It's for dual wield, it's at 3855. Weapon critical is at 51%. That's a fairly high number. Max stamina is 31,000. Max magicka is at 10,000. My physical and spell resistance are pretty respectable at 30,000 and 27,000. Like I say, this is a 5-1-1 build, 5 medium, 1 light, 1 heavy, and that's basically to satisfy this passive, which increases your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% per piece of armor. So that gives you a lot right there. Just getting into it, I'm going to start with the armor set, and then I'll get into some of the techniques I use to keep this going. Because like I say, 23 max health isn't really all that much, so there's a few things you got to do to mitigate that. Starting out, I use the Bloodspawn set. Everything here is impenetrable, and everything is glyphed with max stamina. This gives you stamina recovery, which is really important, and it gives you a lot of ultimate back and physical and spell resistance. This procs quite a bit, and it gives you a lot back, and the effect is really noticeable. So this is a very good set to keep on. The second set I use is the Night Mother set. It gives me weapon critical, weapon damage, and it gives major fracture, which will cause my weapon damage to go up right at around 10%, or maybe just under that, because you take away their resistance. So this pretty much stays up all the time, and it's good for you and your group to have that, at least somebody wearing this, because it keeps the major fracture on the enemy, and they can't take the heat. My second set is Hunting's Rage, and I've tested some various sets out, and I found that Infuse actually does give more damage than just about anything else. And I've got it glyphed with disease damage, which in combination with my champion points, it gives about a 42% healing reduction on the enemies. So as long as they have this on them, which is going to be pretty much 100% of the time, their healing is going to be pretty far reduced. And the same thing on the back bar. On my dual wield, I have a disease damage and a poison damage. Even though these are half of what this is, they can both go off at the same time. So this does actually work pretty well. For the jewelry, I have 1 stamina recovery, 2 weapon damage glyphs, and everything is made with a protective trait. That's really important for this build. So when you have this, you have a pretty respectable resistance set, especially when the blood spawn procs. When you're buffed up, you're going to be at around 30,000. When blood spawn procs, you're going to be at about 36k, 34k down here. It works really, really well, and it seems to be up just about half the time when you're in an intense battle. Your critical resistance is pretty good on this build, and generally that's where you need to be. Your critical resistance needs to be fairly high in Cyrodiil and Imperial City, just because if you don't, you're going to get one-shotted. So the contributing factors to my high resistances are the jewelry set with the protective traits. Also going into my Nord passives, I have rugged, increase your physical and spell resistance by 3960. So that it all works out pretty well. So this low number is not as low as I guess you might think. No, I'm just going to get into the skill sets. Typically, when I buff up, I start out with molten armaments. This increases my weapon damage due to the passives by about 10%, me and my group. Cauterize, you're going to want to keep this up during battles. This really heals you for quite a bit, and it'll crit heal you as well. I think fully buffed up, this will crit heal me for about 9,500. I've been literally down to like 5% health. Use this along with vigor, and it seemed like instantly I was right back up to full health again, and that happens a lot, quite a bit. I use Venomous Claw and Cauterize. Now Venomous Claw is a quicker skill to apply than some. A lot of DKs will use Noxious Breath, and that gives your enemies major fracture. And this is a really good skill, but I already get major fracture from this set here, the Night Mother set, and it stays up pretty much 100% of the time. So Noxious Breath can be kind of slow to apply, but it's not a bad skill. It does a pretty good bit of damage, and you could still use it. It's just for this build, it's probably not the best. Probably Venomous Claw along with Rending Slashes. The numbers actually look pretty good. Venomous Claw is, oh, you're sitting right at around 18,000 total, and just about the same here. What I like to do is keep these two on an enemy. Like I'll get up to an enemy and I'll use molten armaments, and this will increase my heavy attacks, so they actually mean something. I'll heavy attack to an animation candle into Rending Slashes, and use Venomous Claw along with it. So in using these two, typically the enemy's going to go down pretty quick, and they're not going to be able to heal their way out of it. Of course, you have Resolving Vigor up and Cauterize. When you're fully buffed up, you're going to have sufficient resistances in order to keep them from damaging you. In using Resolving Vigor and Cauterize, you're good to go. I've kept Take Flight on the back bar just because I like being able to launch myself at a certain place, but this is not really the ultimate I use typically, and I'll explain why in a minute. On my two-hander bar, Reverse Slice, this deals quite a bit of damage to low health enemies and the enemies around them. Now you can use the other one, as the other morph as well. It's good. It does a little more damage, but I like the fact that I can damage pretty much everything in front of me. So this is one I use. I guess whichever morph you use is up to you. Crit Rush is it's a really good skill to have. It's a good gap closer. If you're inside a Zerg and they don't have you two pinned down, you can kind of crit rush to an enemy on the other side or whatever and just get out of the way. Of course, I've got Dizzying Swing. This is a really good skill. Of course, you could replace this with the Earthen Heart skill, Fossilize. It doesn't do as much damage, but you know, it does immobilize them and keep them from healing. But I keep this here just because it works. It seems to work pretty well. I've got Volatile Armor. This increases my physical and spell resistance. And I've got Forward Momentum. This will give me weapon damage, and it'll give me a nice heal every 2 seconds while it's active. So I've kept that. Now this is a really special skill, Onslaught, and this comes from your two-handed ultimate abilities. This does quite a bit of damage against players and mobs and just about anything. The reason being is it goes through physical and spell resistance. So we're almost at 18k, and this can crit as well. And do your crit being as high as it is, 50% of the time this is going to be a crit. So this is a real strong skill to have. If you get, say, a player down to 30% or so, and then you hit him with this, you're going to basically one-shot him with this. I would say maybe half to 30%, and you're good to go. And what this does is it gives you physical and spell resistance, but it also gives you let me show you. It gives you a lot of resources back, so every time you use an ultimate, it gives you resources back, and if you kill the enemy with this, it's going to respawn the ultimate's costs. I'll kind of show you what this means. And as you can see, I just was able to keep using that ultimate So basically, if you're doing it right, you can just go on and on using that, and just keep your resources up and just kill stuff along the way. So this is a really good skill to have. I had a player out in Imperial City the other day, and he was able to sneak up on me. He was a Nightblade, and he gave me a Wrecking Blow or a Dizzying Swing, and he did that plus a surprise attack or whatever he did, and got me down to about half of my health or a little less. And then he used this and basically kind of one-shotted me. The whole process didn't really take 2 seconds. It was really quick. It was kind of frustrating, which is kind of the reason I'm using this now. It works really well, and you know, I've been able to try it against players, and it really knocks them down pretty good. So this is really the ultimate to have. Let's see, getting into the champion points. This is what I have. I've got Summon a Sprinter. I've got Summon a Warlord. There's a couple of reasons I like having these. I like being able to sprint around a lot, and I like being able to break free fairly easily. My horse doesn't run out of energy due to this passive. Siphoner, it's kind of nice because it keeps a little dot on them, and they see it and they want to purge it. Mooncalf, my stamina recovery is 56. So I get 12% here, and I keep Arcanist up because, of course, that will help my Cauterize be available all the time, and Molten Armaments along with Volatile Armor. It can be kind of tricky keeping these up, but if you can do it, you'll be in good shape. So I have that there. Of course, in Befoul, this along with my glyphs gives me about a 42% healing reduction, and it works really well. All I have to do is keep the running slashes up and the venomous claw, and their health does go down just about without fail. And if you're in front of them and you're healing with Cauterize and Vigor, the chances are they're not going to be able to outburst you. I would say about 95% of the players. So keep this and this on the players, and it actually works pretty fast. But what I like to do is keep these two on a player, and then come here and start using Dizzying Swing. You get them down to about 30% or so, and then you want to use Reverse Slice, and of course using your light attacks in between your skill sets will really help you out a lot as well. Here I've got 49 into Blessed. This gives my healing done a 11% boost. Now what complements this is this quick recovery. I've got 9% here, and tack that onto 11% here. All of a sudden we're at 20%. Well, if I use a Draconic Power, which typically for that I'll have Volatile Armor, this will increase my healing received by 12%. So I've got 20% on top of the 12%. That's a 32% buff and healing. So that works really well. Master at Arms is important as I deal a lot of direct damage. So I've got some points there. As you can see, 72. This complements this. Basically, it's kind of the same thing. So you got 13% on top of 23%, which increases your damage by about 36%, I guess. I don't have a lot here, and normally I would, but one of the reasons I don't is because I have the Night Mother set. This is going to reduce the enemy's healing, so I really don't need as much here as maybe somebody else. Precise strikes, I've got it up to 19% just because my critical is high enough for this to really start to matter. So I've kept this fairly high. I've got 56 into Ironclad, which protects me against direct damage. 14 into Medium Armor Focus. I've got 58 into Resistance. It's important to have points here because this is your critical resistance, and without critical resistance you're basically going to get one-shotted out in Cyrodiil. And one of the other things that goes towards my critical resistance is the Impenetrable trait, which I have everything of. But anyway, that's your armor alongside with this will give you critical resistance, and you're going to want to have about 3,000. I've got some points into Thick Skin because damage over time can really eat you up. I know because this build deals a lot of damage over time. I've got some points into Hardy, Elemental Defender, and of course Quick Recovery. Now, I'm not saying that these are ideal for everybody. It's just what I've used, and it's worked pretty well for me. So I'll just let's see. Well, as far as food that I like to use, you can either use this Artaeum takeaway broth, and this is a little bit better than Dubious Gammon Throne, but not much. I just have it, and I typically use it, but it doesn't give you that much more than this. So one of the biggest things this will give you is an additional health recovery, and that's nice to have, but really either of these would work just fine. Now typically this will give you the most damage, the Essence of Weapon Power, but this also is a really good potion to use. It gives you immunity to knockback, and it gives you that extra weapon critical rating. So I keep a lot of these handy, but typically I like to go with either of these. I like the Major Expedition potions just because it does keep me mobile. This is an Essence of Invisibility, grants you Major Expedition and makes you invisible. I like to keep this handy because if there's a situation where there's a Zerg or something like that and I want to disappear, I'm able to do it. I have it here. I don't use it a lot, but now I've been getting these as like a part of a daily reward. These are Tri-Stat potions. I've kept them on here. I figure why not. Now I've got the essence of immovability. This is for when you have Nightblades around. This is really good. There's a few things which allow you to detect Nightblades, but this is good because it keeps you from being CC'd. And if you can see a Nightblade, generally you can kill them fairly easily because they tend to be squishy, and this build does put out a pretty good bit of damage. And of course, you know, I've got a sigil of Imperial Intrigue. This is really good to have in Imperial City and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's what I use. Technique-wise, remember, keep your cauterize up. As you can see, this ultimate just kind of keeps going and going like the Energizer Bunny. And every time you use it, you get all your resources back, which is really good for a DK. Okay, you see, I didn't kill him with that, so now I've got to build up my ultimate again, which really on this build isn't a problem. Go find something else to kill here. Now I realize that these are just mobs and they're not really particularly hard. But, you know, with that said, now I'm going to go ahead and show you just how quickly your damage over time effects can work. You see how quickly that ran? So, typically on an enemy, you want to just put damage over time effects on first. I'll demonstrate that here. As you can see, that went pretty quick. Also, what is kind of hard to see here, since I don't have add-ons, is my axes will cause a lot of bleeds in between.
Has Molag Bal forgotten us? I refuse.
You can see how quickly that went. So typically what I like to do is get up to a player, and even though it doesn't really go that fast, it does go steadily, and you keep hitting him with rending slashes and venomous claw. Even though the tooltip isn't really all that high, what you got to understand is the crit will really come into play on that. If you'll remember, I've got 19% added to my critical damage, so my crits are going to hit pretty hard. So as you can see, it all works out pretty well. Your enemies are going to have a real tough time healing their way through this, so that's just something to keep in mind. Once you have this on them, then you can go to work with your two-handed abilities and just burst them down that way. Finish them off with an onslaught. Onslaught hits really hard, and you're gonna knock them out. Preferably give them like a dizzying swing. Your dizzying swing, even though it's only a 13k, it does crit pretty hard. So hit him with that, knock him down, and you should be able to hit him with that and pretty much finish him off. But anyway, that's what I've used. Of course, after I end this video, I'm going to probably forget something, but anyway, that's going to be about it. This works really well, and I've been able to kill a lot of people with this. For a medium armor build, this has some pretty good resistance and heals. And one other thing, I'd like to kind of talk about the heals a little bit. One of the reasons the heals work so well is this armor set paired up with this armor set. This gives you about 15% weapon critical. Now, if all buffed up, getting into my vigor, that number isn't really super high, and I realize that. But using the 51% critical, I figured I'm probably, whenever I hit that, realistically, I'm going to get about 28,000 in terms of heals out of that. So that's why the critical really matters. And of course, having this paired with this, you're going to be really hard to kill. So along with the physical and spell resistance, I'm really hard to damage with this build, and having this gives me most of the benefits of medium armor without some of the drawbacks. So anyway, I guess I'll probably end the video here. I think I've rambled on enough. Maybe you guys can learn something from it. But anyway, that's what I've been doing, and I guess I'll catch you guys out there. Take care.